Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today's sustainable teach-in on mending knits. I really appreciate it. And I'm leading today's workshop on mending knits. We also have Charlotte Darnford, our experiential OCAD placement student, and she'll be answering all questions in the chat today. So if you notice anything, if you have any questions, if you want to talk about something, just ask Charlotte, or you can unmute yourself and just speak your mind. But I just ask you to kindly stay on mute until you have something you want to share. So I'm going to be sharing my screen, and I have a little presentation for all of you. So thank you for joining my Sustainable Textile Teach-In. This week is Mending Knits. We've previously presented Mending with Patches and Mending with Sewing. So this is the third installment in this mending series. My name is Allie Davis. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the public programming assistant at the Textile Museum. I studied craft and design with a specialty in textiles. You might also recognize me from Harborfront Center, where I was an artist in residence for 3 years. I also did our last October teach-in, Mending with Patches, or you might recognize me from the Learning Hub and the Reuse program, where I spend most of my time at the museum. Lily Fullup is a really great mending artist, and she often shares these really fun quotes on her Instagram. And I just love this one: clothes worth wearing are worth repairing. So if you're joining us today, you're someone who cares about your clothing. Thank you so much for taking care of your clothing. It will appreciate you back. The more time you put into your clothes, the more sturdy they'll become and the more loved they'll be. So why mend at all? If you're here, you're someone who cares about this. You probably care about our planet. The textile industry is the second largest polluter in the world. And that's mostly because of overproduction by fast fashion brands. So one way you can combat this is by mending your own clothes instead of buying new things. You might enjoy mending just to preserve something that you really love. You might enjoy the practice of it, the kind of meditation of it, or you might enjoy the record keeping. I know a lot of people keep stitch journals or like to write things on their clothing, embroider things on their clothing. So chances are, I guess, if you're here, you care about that too, and I appreciate it a lot. So mending a knit is different from mending a woven. So we've previously talked about mending wovens if you've come to our other sessions. And knits are different because they have stretch, because they are one continuous yarn. They offer a lot more stretch and warmth, but that also makes them less durable than woven fabrics because they don't have many strings to rely upon. They're just usually one strand. So knits can be very obvious, like a chunky sweater, but there's also things like t-shirts, athletic wear, socks. They're all commonly knits as well. And because they stretch, they can't be repaired using the same methods you would use for a woven. Some of them will work, but some of them are just not possible. Here are some tools you might need if you're mending with us today, or if you want to try in the future. We have darning eggs and mushrooms. We have different styles of darning needles. You can get plastic ones from the craft store. I personally prefer a metal darning needle, but you can start with whatever you have. There are different yarns and threads suitable for mending, so I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. You'll want some sharp scissors, and you might want some things to embellish your textile with, like some beads and buttons or some embroidery thread. There's a fun little gadget on the right-hand side called a speed weave, which has gotten popular lately for making large patches for mending. So check that out if you're interested more in mending wovens. The speed weave can be your friend. The next step is to get inspired. So find some artists online who do really cool mending that you're interested in. One of my favorites is Flora Collingwood Norris. She was featured in Vogue and many mending magazines, knitting magazines. She does beautiful Swiss darning, beautiful duplicate stitch. And she goes beyond just mending the fabric into creating a really versatile textile with lots of different colors. And I think what she's done really beautifully on this particular piece is she's created a gorgeous color palette. Oh, sorry about this. me scroll through. Sorry about that. So yeah, she's created this lovely color palette with orange, blue, red. So it not only complements her original textile, but it really goes beyond and makes it super beautiful. Okay, sorry about that. So this is Celia Pym. She's someone else you'll encounter online if you're interested in mending. She considers mending more of an art form, and this piece is her teaching jumper. It had just one hole in it, but she used it to demonstrate a lot of different techniques and a lot of different colors and ways to show people just the beauty of mending and visible mending in general. She talks a lot about like the story behind pieces, so how mending can really increase the value of something by also adding to the memory of the piece, the life cycle of the piece. And this other really fun piece is by Tom of Holland. He called it the 6-year darn. It was a sweater he spent 6 years mending. It was full of moth holes, and he just worked on it and worked on it until they were all filled. It's really gorgeous, especially the image on the right with the cuff, I think is particularly interesting. And he has a blog where he shares a lot of his journey with mending and what he enjoys about mending. So if you're ever researching online after the session, you're going to encounter a few terms. The first term is woven darning, sometimes called Scotch darning. And that's where you're essentially weaving a small patch over the piece and kind of weaving it through the knit as well. Duplicate stitch, also called Swiss darning, is the tiny V shapes that literally go on top of an already knit stitch or add on to it. It's really good for thinning areas of cloth, but you can do it over holes as well. And then you're going to see a lot of decorative repair. You're going to see things like with Flora, Collingwood, Norris, where they're really colorful, really interesting. You might see some beading, buttons, embroidery, needle felting. You can knit things and then kind of patch them on top as a decorative repair. So it's all about the creativity and kind of keeping an open mind with how you think things should look, your aesthetic preferences. Woven darning is, what it sounds like. You're going to find the hole in your garment and then create a warp and a weft like a basic weave, and then weave your needle in and out to create a small woven patch on top of your fabric. So what I've done in these photos, I've done first kind of the warp threads, so those vertical threads going across the fabric. Then I filled in horizontally in the second photo, and in the third photo I actually went for a kind of diagonal stitch through as well, just because the hole hadn't covered completely, so I wanted to make sure it was a very sturdy piece. And this is was my first attempt at woven darning. With kind of a less traditional approach. I just wove the needle through the thinning areas and then created a denser patch in the center where the biggest part of the hole was. So it was a thinning textile, and I used the yarn to really thicken and make it more sturdy, but then also cover a hole in the center. This is a kind of good diagram showing duplicate stitch. I'm going to show it as well I'm going to demonstrate it as well on a hat, but basically you can see you're copying the stitch layout and you're weaving your needle just like it were a knitting needle, and you're going right on top of the existing yarn. So for a duplicate stitch, you want a yarn that's the same weight as the yarn that you're going on top of. There's also fun ways to embellish your knits. So these examples from this Instagram account I've linked on the bottom. They're woven darning and needle felting, but the artist gets very creative with the ways that they like to repair. The sweater on the right has several of these eyes throughout it that they've just felted with roving on top of the existing sweater. So if you know that your sweater is 100% wool, you're welcome to felt it, and that is a good way of covering and repairing holes as well. If you want to learn more about mending, feel free to visit these artists. These are the artists I came across in my research, and I think they're fantastic. They have a lot of resources, especially Flora Collingwood Norris's website. She has paid video tutorials and classes if you're interested in learning more and you want to pay a little bit to do so. But there are also some low-cost books. Some of them are available in our museum shop. And there are free blogs as well, such as Tom of Holland. You can look through Celia Pym's Mending gallery. She has a whole gallery on her website. And Aruna on Instagram shows quite a few of her men's as well. So if you want to learn more, these are the people I recommend looking at. This video is being recorded, so if you miss any of these names, you can just go to the recording and screen cap to look at these later. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation, and I'm going to be demonstrating now. Okay, great. I hope you all can see me, and I hope that went well. Yes, Flora Collingwood Norris did the first stitching example, and you can visit. You can watch the rest of our talks online on our Vimeo account. So I'll be sending those to your emails shortly. So in a few days, once we've edited the recording, they'll all be sent to you, and I'll include some links to our previous teach-ins as well. So just gonna spotlight my other camera. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and talk. I want this to feel very comfortable and casual. I'm kind of a new mentor myself. I just started a couple months ago, so I'm learning too, and this can be a discussion if you'd like. Most of my materials here are from our reuse program. So if you haven't been to the museum lately, we're running a new reuse program where we're selling donated secondhand textiles, yarns, tools, all kinds of things. That's where I got my darning mushroom. That's where I got some of these threads. I think the first thing that I'd like to talk about is building a color palette. So when you're working with all these fun colors, you want to find a yarn that kind of matches what you're working with, or maybe contrasts in a bright way. I think Flora does that incredibly well. She has her kind of go-to color palette, but she also experiments a little bit. This is an example of duplicate stitch that I was working on last night. So you can see it's mending, but it's also embroidery. It's also decorative. So I've gone in here and I've added on top, I've kind of freehand embroidered here. I'm just going on top of my pre-existing stitches. Just like the diagram that I showed, but you're going to see there are these kind of A shapes and V shapes. So you're going to come up through a center point. I'm just going to do one on the side for demonstration purposes. You're going to come up through the top of a V shape, come down and go through these loops. So you've got the first portion of the V, then you go back through where you already were and tuck underneath. And then suddenly, you know, you have a whole stitch, which is very exciting. And you can do it over and over again. So it's perfect for thinning fabric, which is something I've had to do a lot of mending of. I don't have a lot of holes, but I have a lot of thinning knits. And this is a great way to build structure. Hope you can all see that. So it's kind of decorative as well. And this particular yarn was one that I naturally dyed. I believe it was a fugitive dye. It was hibiscus and iron. But you know, it still contrasts quite nicely with the pink of the hat. And it creates kind of a fun contrast, I think. I have this sock here as well, which has been lovingly mended a few times and donated to me by one of my volunteers. So I'm going to be mending this with my darning needle, and I'm going to do kind of a general darning example. The yarns that I've chosen today from reuse, they're quite thin. We're working with a pretty thin needle, so you want something that can fit through the eye of that needle comfortably without causing too much stress here. You want something that's in a nice color. If it's a sock, it doesn't matter as much, you know, and this is just for demonstration purposes. But if it's something that, you know, you really care about, a sweater, you're going to be wearing something very visible, it's great if you can choose a coordinating yarn like Judy has done here with the different blue on blue. I think that's really lovely. And for yarns, I'm sorry about that. For yarns, you want to choose something that's a similar fiber content to your project. So I know that this sock is wool. This is 100% wool. So I'm going to be using wool to mend it. When you use the same fiber type, they go well together. They start to felt together. They become stronger. But if you use a different fiber type, it's not going to have the same kind of compatibility. It will definitely work. It'll fix the mend. But it won't, you know, felt more over time. It won't continue to get stronger and stronger, which is what we're looking for here. So, you know, anything from like an untreated wool. I have some silk here, which is also an animal fiber. So if you wanted something that's going to felt similar to wool, but also maybe shiny, maybe stand out, a little bit of embellishment on your project, then you might want to try using silk yarn. I have some cotton here too. So some yarns can be cotton, can be polyester, acrylic. You can try mending those with cotton, and that will probably give you more success than mending with wool. One of the good things as well is you want to pick something of a similar weight. So this sock has been made with a quite thin, delicate yarn. So we want to find something that's the same weight as that. Once again, if you have any questions, feel free to shout out to Charlotte in the chat and she will help you out. Charlotte is our OCAD placement student and she's going to be covering Bojogi, I believe, wrapping textiles inspired by Korea. So that's going to be a fun teach-in soon. So you should definitely sign up for that when that's available. If you haven't already, you probably have because you're here, but if you haven't already, try signing up to our newsletter and you'll get our programming every month as it comes out. And you'll be the first to know about all these events. Okay, I'm struggling a little with the yarn.
Yeah, I'm getting questions about how to start darning without creating a knot at the beginning. It might be easier if you demonstrate.
Oh, yeah, of course. So yeah, we definitely don't want to do knots. We want to weave in our ends. So if you see on my hat, I have an end that's kind of coming out randomly at the bottom. So that's where I started. I came in really far away from the piece before I started doing my mend. And then this piece, when I'm all finished, I'm going to pull it back inside and then weave it in and out of the threads underneath so that it's not visible, but that it's kind of tucked away tidy. You can tie as well if you'd like to. It just might be a bit uncomfy. Like if it's a sock, you wouldn't want like a knot on your foot. But I'll show that in just a second. Sometimes when I have trouble getting it through the eye, I just like to twist it a little bit tighter. And I didn't thread too much wool. I just did a little bit because it's a pretty small area. So to start, I just leave a really long tail here, and I'm just conscious of it so that I don't, you know, knot it or anything like that. And this is our other end. So we've fully selected our yarn. We found something else that's 100% wool. This is my darning mushroom that I got from the reuse program. So I've just slipped it inside the heel here. So you can see it kind of gives you a foundation to put your needle and your pins into. That's not your hands. And it also allows you kind of a space to work. You can stretch it or keep it tight. It allows you to adjust your tension. And I have a big rubber band here. And as I mentioned in the tools section, you absolutely do not have to use a darning egg or a darning mushroom. You can use something you have around the house, like a rubber ball, a light bulb. A glass jar works incredibly well, and I've seen that mentioned online a bit. So the first thing, I'm going to enter way down here, far away from the mend. And I'm going to make the patch maybe a 1/4 inch around everything, so it has a little bit of stability. I'm taking care to not everything in this first little bit. So hopefully some of you are at least partially familiar with weaving to some extent. If not, that's totally okay. This is mending for non-knitters. So this is mending for people who cannot simply knit a patch over top. The first thing I'm doing is creating a vertical line. And these lines are going to go all over the patch from right to left. So we're creating kind of stripes going this way. And they don't have to be perfectly even. And this is a very fine knit, so this would be very difficult to do duplicate stitch with, which is why I think darning is the best option. Also that it's a sock, and socks get a lot of abuse, you know, being on our feet all day. So we want something that's sturdy, and socks don't need quite the same flexibility. It's like a sweater. Have any of you brought on your own mending projects to work with us today, or are most of you just watching to try out later?
I knit myself a hat, so I have to darn in all my ends. So I'm just sitting here darning.
Someone else mending a pair of socks. Nice.
Nice.
So this should be helpful, hopefully. If you have anything specific, you know, that you're mending and you need advice as well, I'm happy to give my kind of feedback on that. And I am a beginner, but, you know, I'm happy to offer advice if I can. This is such like a meditative act of appreciation for your garments. So you want to take your time and give it everything that you've got. So you do it right the first time, and then you don't need to repair over and over again. We all get these little knots sometimes. That's okay, we're just gonna roll with it. Oh no, okay, maybe not. Maybe I need to do this one.
Allie, someone just watching for now. I have a sock project as well. I'm wondering how to get wool pieces for darning. Do I have to buy a whole ball?
Well, if you come by Reed's, we have small balls of yarn for sale for just $1. You can take scraps. So if you have any scraps from another project, that'll work well. It of course works the best if you have the exact yarn of the sweater. But if you're like me and you're a non-knitter and these are just things you have around, you're probably not going to have the exact matching yarn, which is totally okay. So you just want to use some small pieces. You can buy a whole ball, of course, just for mending. And I would recommend doing that from a secondhand place. If not from us, I've gotten yarn in the past from Value Village for very cheaply. And you just want to look out for the fiber content. So if the piece that you're mending was made with acrylic yarn, then you want to also get acrylic yarn. If it's made with real wool, then you want to try to find real wool as well. And I should show, let me see, this embroidery cross stitch yarn that I found today in Reuse. It's 100% wool. It's very thin, perfect weight for like socks and things. It's very soft. It's perfect for this kind of project. And it's going to be going back in the reuse bin for 25 cents when I'm done. So whoever, you know, first come, first serve, if you'd like that one. It's really good to find some thinner weight stuff, and it's hard. So if you see it, you know, snatch it out.
Alanie just asked, I've tried mending the inseam of leggings and tights and have not been very successful. Can you recommend some tips?
Oh, for tights, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess it depends what they're made of. I've seen people repair woolen tights with a very thin weight wool yarn. You could also try patching, you know, a more conventional mending technique. You might just want to create a patch for leggings, depending on like the area and if it's really stretchy or not. Because at the end of the day, it is just a fabric, so you can patch it as well. It's just, you know, it's very stretchy, it's very difficult. You can try to find some similar, maybe some elasticated thread might work for you if it's more elastic. So I'm going to do one more on this side, and then I think it'll be good. Okay, so you see I've created, looks like a weave, all my warp threads here. I'm just going to do one little stitch under. hopefully hold in the ends. Oh, sorry. You always want to do a loop or a stitch at the end if possible to try to keep everything together. You don't want to leave too many loose ends. You want to weave all your ends back in at the end of the project or find a way to include them while you're working. So basic kind of plain weave technique is just going over under each thread. I'm going to start over the first one. And then you'll alternate this as you go. And each time you want to push your threads down as low as possible, as tightly as possible. It gets that really packed appearance. And of course, I'm using a contrasting color for demonstration purposes, but it'd be nice to use a color like has been used in the past, this really nice blue, to make it all coordinate together. And I do one stitch just underneath. And then doing the opposite, alternating with what I had before. This way. If you are an experienced knitter, a really easy, common way to repair knits, or not really easy, but easier, I guess I would say, is you can knit a small patch and then weave the ends into your existing garment. So it's almost like a pocket that just goes over top. So if you know how to knit, you could just knit something very small, this size, and kind of attach all the way around. I think it's over on this recent pandemic. Mending has come back into popularity again. It was kind of growing in popularity the past few years as we face, economic uncertainty. It's good to know that your clothes will be there for you if you take care of them. They're something precious and they can last a lifetime. Sorry, I lost my stitch. If you'd like to read about mending, we have some books in our reference library that might help you out, and we also have some books for sale in the museum shop. So that includes the title Mending Life that I really enjoy, and some other good repair as well. You can see it's really starting to get some good structure here. Push it down a little bit. A comb works well for this as well, or a fork, just to secure your stitches. I hope it's all in clear view. Let me know if you can't see anything at all.
I actually have the book Mending Life right here. Here I can like part spotlight myself.
Oh yeah, Charlotte, spotlight.
Add
If
spotlight.
you want to share.
Yes, I'm here. Hello. This book, Mending Life, is at the museum, and it is one of my favorite craft books because it's written by these two sisters that are actually printmakers. So the whole thing is just like beautifully illustrated. It's almost like
Wow, gorgeous.
Yeah. It's like a kid's book for adults almost, or like it has this like kind of sweet...
Kids and kids at heart.
Yeah. But then, and a lot of the sections kind of start out with different essays about their family and friends and different garments they've mended. I was actually just going to read the beginning section because I find they like sum up why mend really nicely. Actually, okay, that's what it's called. It says why mend.
Oh, just like I had in my slideshow. Why mend?
Yeah, exactly. It says, this book is an invitation to you, dear reader, to join the rekindling of an age-old practice. Mending was once a necessity. Most people had only a few cherished garments, and to buy something new was expensive. Today, it costs so little to purchase clothing that when a garment springs a hole, it can be casually discarded and replaced. Yet much of the true cost of clothing made abroad is hidden, including environmental destruction and the dangerous conditions garment workers are subjected to. As our eyes open to these harsh realities, our hearts break. We wonder what we can do in the face of such enormous ecological and humanitarian crisis. At first glance, mending may seem inconsequential, but not only does it mean buying fewer new clothes, thus slowing down the fast fashion cycle, it also invites us into a new way of being. Mending is a powerful act of restoration, both for our clothes and for our relationship to the world. We mend in gratitude, honoring all that went into making the clothes, the people who labored to bring them into being, and the plants and animals that contributed to their creation. In taking care of that which takes care of us, we are demonstrating a deep understanding of our interconnectedness with every part of this world. When we sit down to mend, we cultivate a mindset that extends beyond clothing. Much like meditation, mending teaches us to embrace imperfection and to practice patience and acceptance with ourselves. Through mending, we become accustomed to seeing our hands in the things we own. We become an active participant in their evolution. Making something whole again is also a form of healing, and we humans have a deep desire to heal what is broken. Learning to mend gives us a new lens through which to problem solve. A garment or belonging we thought was beyond repair is now stitched back together by our own two hands, and we discover that we are more resilient than we thought. We may even begin to see other opportunities for healing. We can make amends with someone we're at odds with. We can restore fertility to degraded soil. We can create a thriving urban oasis for pollinators. And with each small act, our broken hearts begin to heal in turn. It's so beautiful.
Oh wow, that's so nice. It like gave me chills. Wow.
And then
they really capture that perfectly, exactly what I wanted to say. That's so sweet.
Yeah, but they take it in this very emotional route. Some of the other pictures.
That's really great.
And they do almost
sharing
in like a red thread as well to like draw attention to the mend, which I find really special. And it's also really interesting how like mending used to be a skill to like kind of hide the imperfections in your clothing, and recently we're like wanting to bring attention to it.
Yeah, I actually had a customer at Reuse today mention to me that they prefer invisible mending, but I think mending now is kind of it's almost a political stance. It's almost a kind of protest. You're telling people by showing the mend that you appreciate your own clothing and that it's something you care about and that it's something you want to share with others. So by showing other people that you're not afraid to wear your clothes many times and that you're not afraid to make that part of your fashion, I think is really important. And it also creates a conversation with some of your friends. And when they see you wearing something that you mended and you're proud of it, it kind of releases that shame that people originally felt when they rewore things. We've moved past the page where everyone needs to mend for financial reasons, but we want to show that we care about our clothing and the planet by wearing things many times. And I think mending really shows that we're not just getting rid of things because they don't suit us. We're committing to buying and repairing things so that they suit us for a lifetime, so that there's something we feel proud having in our collection for a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel nervous or ashamed because it's a cool statement. You're telling everyone how you believe in something. And I'm really happy mending's come back into popularity for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm so sorry, Shayla. I didn't realize I had to unmute you. I thought you could do that. Okay.
I just wanted to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just wanted to share a recent experience that brought mending more to the why should I do it. I've had a couple of pairs of cotton pants that I really love. They fit really well, but they're well worn and there's tears. So I finally sat down and mended them, putting some blue jean behind them. The first one I did was just sort of utilitarian. But what I discovered as I was doing it was it became sort of fun to see what kind of patterns I could create and stitch on top of them. And it actually became a way of wearing something I created. You can make a sweater and wear that, and that's an experience, but this is a little different. Making a whole dress or a pair of pants or whatever and doing a lot of embroidery on them is one way of doing this, but just taking it and mending it and playing with thread colors and patterns, and it just opened my mind to think about different ways of doing it and things I could do. And now, I've got 3 pairs of pants that I can again wear and enjoy. However, one of them, the back is sort of worn out, so more blue jeans coming into that one. But it was an easy way of just, wearing something that I'd made, that I'd done, that I'd explored some creativity on, and come out with some interesting results. So I throw that out as a reason to play with it, if nothing else, just to play and see what happens.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel as well. I find it a fun way to, look through what I have and find a way to use something I have in a new way, to be creative, to exercise your creative muscles, and think about things differently. What you'd want to show on your body, what you think is cool. If you have like new embroidery techniques you want to try out, it's a great way to just like flex your creativity, I think. So I finished the little patch. You can see I've went a little bit outside just to kind of anchor it because there was the previous mend, so I wanted to anchor it just outside of that. And then I'm going to put the thread back inside here, and I'm going to flip the sock inside out to show you how I'm going to weave in my ends. Go. So it's a very nice tight sock. So you'll see I have my 2 ends here. Pull them back through. This one, I'm just going to bring it a little bit away. See where I can tuck in a few stitches.
And Allie, Carol is asking, are you catching any of the sock in the mending you're doing?
Catching any of the sock?
Maybe like the other side of the sock?
Oh, right. So because I'm using a darning mushroom, that prevents me from accidentally catching the other side, but that's a very good point. It's very easy to accidentally go through. So you want to make sure you have your hand there or something underneath to catch that. And you might be able to see the hint of these stitches on the other side, but I'm just doing a couple away from the mend, and I'm tucking under this thread so that they're small, I guess like a half of a knot, you know, nothing to irritate your foot. And I'm pulling tight, and then I'm just going to cut it close, leaving a little bit of a tail. So with time, that will just kind of felt its way in here. I'm going to do the same for the other end as well. I'm just going to bring this piece over here and loop it around a couple times. And cut it. So you have a small kind of knot here. It's not a true knot. It's not a true knot. And you can see everything is being held securely around. And the hole itself is completely covered. So now the heel has, you know, it has some room to stretch because we used the darning mushroom. It has a little bit of space to move and the original fabric underneath. So that's what you're mostly feeling with your foot. And, you know, with time, with the sweat of your feet, walking and agitating it, you're going to create a bit of natural felting here, and that's going to really help strengthen the mend. And the more you mend something, I think the more beautiful it becomes, honestly. There are also some mends you can fix just by sewing. So this is one of my hats. It's split down a side seam. So I'm going to be doing just a small kind of whip stitch around the edges. And this is on the inside, so I don't really need to worry about what it looks like, but I'm just going to do a visible small whip stitch here to keep it together. And I think I'm going to use this white yarn because it's a kind of finer weight, more similar to the hat. I'm just checking our chat to see if there's any. Yeah, so if anyone would like wool remnants, you know, I encourage you to come to our reuse program, and I can help you out and give you some wool ends, or we can talk about, you know, we have balls of yarn for $1, some small ones. And once again, I'm not cutting a huge amount of yarn because I don't want to be wasteful. This is a pretty small project. Another really fun way you can embellish your knits is just by replacing or adding buttons. My partner had a cardigan that was very old that he thrifted, and it's the one I used in the pictures in the slideshow. So once it got a few holes, it's quite holey at the moment. He's actually just happy to have me add some buttons to the front so he can button it again.
Tracy is asking, is the reuse program open every day?
It is open Wednesdays to Saturdays, the same time as the museum is open. And I am going to do just a small knot on the edge here because this is a very, very delicate knit. So it calls for a very small knot so it doesn't slip through. I'm going to go a little bit outside of where the stitch was. And put together the two seams. They were kind of rolled on the inside. No, not the knot slipping again. Here we go. I'm just gonna kind of slip it under the rows of stitches. It's not even through all the way to the back. And when we buy things fast fashion, like this beanie, sometimes we spend more time repairing it than it's even worth. So it's another good reminder to buy things from artist friends if you can, or doing clothing swaps with your friends. That can be a good way of getting some quality stuff too. When you're repairing something that's really special and worth more to you, it has memories, you know, of you and your friend. It's all about thinking about the bigger picture of the environment and how much we actually need, because we need so little to clothe our bodies. And we have on Earth more textiles than we can even use. And again, this is on the inside, so I'm not being very fiddly or perfectionist with this. I'm just being utilitarian. I think the little piece of sewing thread that they had in here is just not going to do it long term. I've been wearing this hat for years and it's not gonna last. It's not gonna do it for me. And I'm sure that this beanie is acrylic, but if it was wool, then I would suggest getting your felting needle out if you have one, and then also felting the edge together after you're done sewing it. Felting is one of the best ways to repair wools. It's very strong and lasts a very long time. It's something we've been doing since like the beginning of time. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's something that just always seems to work really well.
They haven't displayed their name, but someone on their iPad said they found a wonderful dry gourd that they have from Mexico and used it instead of a mushroom. And that's pretty good.
That is so fun. Wow. That's perhaps more fun than using a darning mushroom. That's really great. I love that. If you have a special object to use for mending, then that's even more special. I've seen often recommended online a glass jar, a light bulb, a thick skinned fruit like a lemon, a rubber ball, a tennis ball. You know, you probably have something in the room with you that you can use. But I think glass or metal, if you have something, or wooden, that's not gonna, that's not gonna take the thread at all. And just like that, my hat is ready to be worn again.
Julie is asking, would you need a needle punch to needle felt? Lots of needles.
Not at all. So a needle punch is a great tool for felting. I used one myself in college, but I actually just own right now a bunch of single needles, and that seems to do the job just fine. You want to wear a thumb guard, or I have one here I can show you. So from the dollar store, I bought these small thumb guards. So you can use to protect your thumb when you're felting, and it also helps you get some grip on the material. So then I would take my edge, press the edges together, and needle felt like this, close to my finger, just to create another edge. And that's the amazing thing about wool and felting in general, is that you don't really need to sew it, you can felt it. And felting is just amazing, honestly. It's really special. We are running a series of felting workshops next month for the holiday. They'll be on the website in a few days. And in those, I'm hoping just to cover how to make ornaments with needle felting, garlands, and cards, things you can give to your friends. So if you're new to felting or a beginner, we're going to have kits available with fleece or roving and felting needles. So if you need anything for felting for the future, come in and let us know, and we'll get you something. We'll get you set up.
That actually leads into the next question, where Mary Ann is asking, could you explain how to fix a knitted garment by felting? And what
of course. Yeah, I wish I had a felting needle here. I do not. But basically, you want to take a piece of styrofoam. So just pretend that this starting egg is a piece of styrofoam. You lay it inside. You lay your roving, which is this, it's basically fleece. You lay your roving across the area you want to repair. You lay it in two directions. So you do kind of like weaving. You do a piece going this way and a piece going this way, and then you needle felt many, many times, a few hundred times, till it's really nice and dense. And then the wool that's here should create kind of a patch, a similar thing to this, but it's creating a patch just out of felt, and that should all be attached to the wool on the inside. So it's really perfect for thinning pieces. Anything that's, it's got maybe some moth holes in it, or it's just a little bit thinning from years of wear, felting is perfect for that. If you want to buy raw roving or fleece or anything like that, we do have some in the reuse program. We have quite a bit of roving available, mostly for our workshops. But if you come in and you like some, just ask, I can help you out. But you can also get wool at Romney Wools, at craft stores like Michael's, perhaps even sometimes at Value Village. There are quite a few kids felting books and sets, kits you can buy already put together. Hi, Mary Ellen. Thank you for your kind words. I hope you have a good evening. Great, so we have just about a half hour left. So I'm going to keep demonstrating here. I'm going to try a little bit of duplicate stitch. I'm going to do some duplicate stitch over this heel with the fine white wool here. And if you have any projects you're working on, this is the time that I'm calling Q&A. So if you'd like to unmute yourself or ask Charlotte to unmute you and share something you're working on, or share your screen, share what you're doing, I would love to see it. And I'm also happy to answer any questions that anyone has about their projects while I'm here. You can also, of course, make your own felt patches. You can add a patch like to the front of your beanie. You can embroider with wool yarn. You can add beading, you can add buttons, you can do initials. The fun thing about duplicate stitch is it's almost like cross stitch in the sense that you can get creative and add your own things. Come out here a little bit away.
Louise is asking, will you have time to demonstrate patching a t-shirt? And then I also do have an example of a felting needle here after you answer that.
Oh yeah, sorry. So I don't have any t-shirts or felting needles on me at the moment. I'm so sorry. But mending a t-shirt as a knit is very similar to any other garment. You can do a visible or invisible mend using a very fine yarn like this. You're going to want to find a yarn or thread that's close to the weight of your t-shirt and then work on it similarly to these. So you want to use a darning egg so you can get a little bit of stretch around that area so it emulates the stretch of the garment. And then you're going to want to do either a woven patch like this, or you're going to want to do some duplicate stitch over that. So this is a very fine area, a little bit chunkier, of course, than a t-shirt, but still quite fine. So I'm going to come up here. So we've got, V shapes and A shapes. I'm going to come up the top of this A shape. And follow the structure of the knit. Of course, it is quite delicate, quite fine. So I could just sometime unthread. So this yarn is also great because you can use it as 2-ply. If you have something and it's too thin, you can always double up the weight. Sorry, you can double the weight of your yarn. Or you can go chunky with roving. If you're not sure what roving is, it was quite trendy for those arm knit blankets. If you remember, that was quite a trend just a couple of years ago. And you're following along the curve. It's called duplicate stitch because you're quite literally duplicating what was there before and you're just going on top. So now instead of just one layer of yarn, this area has 2. So you're going behind the A shape to get the stitch on the right hand side. And the tension is very important, else the stitch may just kind of disappear. And then you're going underneath, back through the top where you started, and underneath the loop you made. It's doubling itself every time. So you see how this could also be used as an embroidery technique. You could do initials, you could do a snowflake, you could do really just about anything. Star shapes. I've seen some really cool men doing like circle type shapes, hearts. That eyeball one was pretty funky. And it's already starting to look a little bit like a knit, right? Even though it's fake. We're doing it with a needle, but it looks a bit like a knit.
Allie, Louise actually has felting needles and they're offering to show them to the camera.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, I don't have them on me. I should have remembered, but
Well,
sorry about
that
that.
spotlight, there we go.
Yeah, and they have little barbs on the end, so it helps the wool attach to itself. You can kind of think of the concept of dreadlocks, that's felting, and cat toys, you know, pom-poms, those are all usually felted.
Thank you.
And felting is a no-sew technique. So if you're not a confident sewer, I definitely recommend trying felting for your repairs. It's already created a whole line of stitch, and you're kind of doing it by eye. So if you'd like to do a second area, I'm going to finish off one more. Oops. So then you just come out in a different spot. If you want to start again at the top of the row, you just move up to the top of another row. There are also really fun patterns online I saw last night when I was making my little pine tree. And there's guides for how to monogram, how to do your initials. You see, it's making rows there. And it's very subtle, which is super useful. You don't always want things to be big and chunky, but it still has that kind of stretch and moves with the other areas. Would anyone like to see another kind of patch example, maybe with a chunkier yarn, just for the sake of demonstration? I think that might be good. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep hitting the camera. It has to be so close for you guys to see my hands. I also suggest, this is just besides the point, but I also suggest, you know, keeping your scraps, and you can use them for another project, or if they're very small, just like sewing scraps. I put mine into a plastic bag, and then when I fill the bag, I can stuff a pillow out of it, or use as stuffing, you know, for something else, a cushion, a doll, you know, anything, a stuffed toy. That way you're not just throwing things away. There's lots of ways to kind of creatively use the things around you, as odd as it might seem. You might feel a little crazy, but it's good to save your scraps. You never know when you might need it. So let's do another darning sample. So let's pretend there's a hole here. You want to leave a pretty long tail, you know, a couple inches. And you want to go straight up. With a knit that's chunkier, it's much easier to keep your lines straight, which is also really nice. Makes it a lot easier. If you have something that's particularly stubborn, you might want to try using interfacing to stabilize while you do some mending. There's a type of interfacing called solvy, which comes out with water, so you can use it to stabilize, do some mending, and then wash it away, which is very useful. I almost never wore this hat because it was just so generic. It's a gift from my mom, so it has sentimental value. But now that it has a cute tree on it, I might be more inclined to wear it out. Hi, Louise. Thanks for your kind words. And yeah, we will be sending a copy of the recording to everyone. So if you have any questions, you can email me or you can wait to view that recording. It'll probably just take a couple days and then I will email it to everyone. And I may include a copy of the slideshow as well in case you'd like to refer just to see names of publications, websites. And feel free to contact me anytime, by the way, if you have any questions about the reuse program or about our teach-ins. My email is adavis@textilemuseum.ca. So feel free to contact me if you have any other kind of concerns or questions about our programming in particular. I've created my vertical threads. We call them warp threads in the weaving community. I wonder if any of you are weavers. I'm sure there's at least one weaver in the audience. Securing that end and then repeating the process. Yes, Megan is a weaver, so hopefully they understand what I'm talking about. It's called plain weave. That's the way most cloth is made. It's just alternating threads. And I know it's a common kids craft to just do paper weaving with a plain weave. It's very fun. You get some strips of newsprint or magazine and you can just weave them like this. Does anyone else have any mending projects they'd like to share? I would love to see. Do we sell sock loopers in the reuse store? I'm not really sure what that is, but we do have a lot of weird and wonderful things in reuse. We get tons and tons of odd things because it's just donations. It's whatever anyone chooses to donate to us. So that can be fun too.
We have a few other questions, Allie.
Sure.
Someone is asking, do you have any affiliations with an organization outside of Toronto? I'm in Calgary.
Currently, I'm not quite sure our program specifically. So I work in the education department of the museum, and our reuse program specifically doesn't have any affiliations, but I'm sure our museum in general has some affiliations with other organizations. I just can't say for certain. I'm also pretty new to the museum. I will say I've been working here since August. So if you have any specific questions about like connecting with us or connecting with other organizations, I mean, feel free to email us and we can talk about that more.
Tracy is also asking, I'm having trouble finding where to sign up for the newsletter from the museum. Do you have to be a member to receive them? And I believe,
do they have to be a member? No, anyone can sign up for the newsletter. I think it's in the contact us section, but it may just be kind of at the bottom of the page or somewhere there.
Link.
Maybe you can find a link, Charlotte.
Yeah, that's on it.
Oh, thank you so much. And that's where we post our monthly programming, and we do only send, one email a month, so we won't bombard you too much. I know I'm a little hesitant to sign up for too much online marketing, but we try to be good. We only send the useful information.
Okay, so it looks like the best way to sign up is actually if you go on the main page of the museum's website and you scroll down, there's like a big red bar that says sign up for our newsletter. And that's
Yes.
the simplest way.
Yeah, I thought it was something like that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for that. And that really is the best way to stay in contact.
Yeah, so I'll just post main page in the chat, but
Great, thank you. And also just emailing myself in general if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Or you can just send a general inquiry through the contact page.
Shayla is also asking, do you know how to do an embroidered patch like the ones that are shown on Instagram, like the shape of a leaf or a heart?
Sure, so that's all just about your own creativity and making shapes. So if you're a knitter and you knit a patch in that shape, or you can mark out with chalk. I have pink chalk here, but this is also pink, so that's not very useful. But if you wanted to do a patch in the shape of a heart, you can mark out, say I'm marking a heart here, and use your patch or your duplicate stitch and just stay inside the borders here and only come out at the points in the heart that you've marked, as opposed to making it just kind of a rectangle or a free-form shape, as I've done here. You can make it any shape that you want. And that's one of the great things about this kind of stuff, right? And of course, if you're a knitter, you can knit a patch and then just attach it. Great question, thank you. I also have mended a couple cuffs. Way to mend a cuff is to do kind of a blanket stitch around the edge to strengthen it, and then adding some woven darning areas on the patch to fill in any areas where the knitting might have worn away. Everything we do is with the integrity of the garment in mind, right? So you're problem solving to figure out what's going to create the most integrity in your fabric so that it doesn't come apart soon. And knits are so prone to needing a lot of care and attention. So you just have to give it that attention and see what it needs and then try to help it. You can see in them a little bit. I stray from the camera sometimes. There you go. It's just about finished. Again, so we're imagining, of course, that there's a hole in there, and there's not, but this is a very strong little area. You know, it still stretches, it still holds a little bit of stretch, but it's got 2 layers of yarn now instead of just one, which is perfect. We also have a few short clips of darning by Jan Nemirovsky on our Vimeo page. So I'll send those as well, just for some more visual kind of short reference, if you'd like that. And this is the quick free tutorial, but there are many amazing paid tutorials, such as the ones I mentioned from Flora. So if you have the ability, to pay to access those, that's how you can really advance your techniques. And of course, working long and hard, practicing a lot. Okay, so I'm going to turn it inside out. And you can see how it's kind of secured the whole way around. I'm just going to do a couple loops around here so that it stays stable without really knotting it. Okay, and we're just leaving some tails. So that's a pretty symmetrical square patch, but as we just said, you can create any shape, you know, you just draw outline with chalk how you want it to be, and then you get creative. You can use any color, style, any beads you like, anything to spruce up. And just going back to the chat to check it out. Yeah, Charlotte's done a beautiful mend with a star shape on Instagram. I recommend you all looking at Charlotte's Instagram as well and TikTok account where she shares videos of mending as well. So she is a great support here today. I hope all of you got what you were expecting. And I'm here for any questions for the next, 7 minutes. Thanks so much for joining me today. Patching on leather with wool, like elbow patches. Oh, that's a good question. So leather is very strong, of course. So you want to get a little awl or something you can punch holes with. Thank you, Megan. Oh, where'd my video go? Oh, spotlight. Okay. So I'm not sure why my phone is asleep. Oh, low battery mode. Okay, here we go. Sorry, remove and spotlight my hands again. Perfect. So yeah, talking about, fiber types, this is an acrylic. Most likely, I don't know for sure what type this is, but it seems like it's probably acrylic. It's fast fashion. We're not going to expect it to be pure wool. So if I got a hole in this and I had to mend it, I would try to use a similar weight acrylic yarn or perhaps a sewing thread, something that's going to be a compatible fiber type. You can use stitch markers and pins to kind of plan out your design. Plant a few pins around, mark in chalk. You can combine your patches and your knits as well. So anyone who joined me for Mending with Patches last month, you can create a beautiful sashiko patch and then place it over top, kind of like I've done here, and then just sew into as a normal. A very strong, sturdy stitch with a similar fiber type. You can felt it on, with needle felting or wet felting if you know how to do that technique. Oh, sorry, just dropped my needle. Oh no. Oh no. My goodness. Okay, I lost my needle. Oh, no. So I guess that's going to be the end of the session for today. We just have 4 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, I would love to help you. Otherwise, I guess I'll see you around. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, June and Anne-Marie. Thank you. And Megan, thank you so much for coming. You've all been very sweet today, and I hope I've given you some things to think about, maybe some more resources if you want to learn more, if you need more. Thank you, Julie. I'm gonna put my face so that you can actually see me while I'm talking. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate all of you. And I feel like I learned something while I'm working, and hopefully you learned something from me too. I will share more images on my Instagram. Perhaps you can write it in the chat, Charlotte. It's at Witch Dyes, WITCHDYES, like dyeing, because I am primarily a natural dyer. So I will share more men's and photos on there as well. And I will send the video to everyone in just a couple days. Stay tuned to our newsletter, of course, for more programming. And I will see you all later. Thank you so much for coming. And yes, thank you, Charlotte, for supporting us. And she will be teaching wrapping with fabric next time. So stay tuned for that as well. We'll be putting that up shortly. Thank you, Anna. I hope you learned something. And love to see people outside of the province. That's a really exciting thing about being virtual, right? I can meet so many people, not just in Toronto, but anywhere. If you are not local, we are, of course, downtown Toronto at 55 Center Avenue, and we'd love to see you in person. Okay, everyone, thank you so much and have a good evening. I will see you all soon in our next programming series with needle felting. Take care, everyone.